This video is a public service announcement. So if you're only here for the automotive content, definitely not the report for you, dude. Now, Albo, who has to go at the next election, abetted by this genius, Communications Minister Michelle Rowland, personal opinion, they're about to introduce into legislation the worst peacetime assault on your free speech, like your freedom of speech, in Australian history. They want to gag you from criticising them. That's the agenda, especially criticising them online, which they really hate. So they're going to get Facebook and X, YouTube, Google, etc., all the platforms. They're going to get them to do their dirty gagging work for them. It's properly underhanded. And of fucking course, they're dressing this all up as keeping you safe, protecting you from misinformation. That sounds good, doesn't it? But I don't know about you. I just don't need the government to function like my digital frickin' parents, telling me what I can say, what I can watch, what I can listen to, what opinion I'm allowed to have. I'm not a kid anymore, dude, and neither are you. Of course, Mr. Potato Head and his impotent shadow henchman for communications, David Coleman, who is not only, in my opinion, the biggest lefty on their team, but who also makes last week's lettuce in the compost bin look positively erect, metaphorically, personal opinion. They've previously positioned their shop as the champions of free speech, but they're nowhere on this. They're hiding under the rug, 100% ostrich. They're just holding their junk and ducking for cover. And they're doing this because they're quite happy to shut you up also. It's properly disgraceful political conduct. The icing on the cake, of course, is that nobody asked for this legislation. There's no community demand for this shit. They're not serving you or me with this ridiculous bill. They're just pleasing themselves. And that's a movie that I really don't want to watch ever. You'd have to staple my frickin' eyes open for that one. The opposition, whose only job it is to oppose this kind of legislation, they just can't be asked. It kind of suits them, you know? This is what democracy looks like when the train comes properly off the rails. I'm John Cadogan from Auto Expert. .com.au, new cars cheap at Australia only. Website, card. I'm going to get into just how preposterously shit this bill is in just a sec, okay? But the clock is ticking and there's essentially no time. So you need to act. You need to be part of the political process. I mean, this is open to you all the time, and in situations like this, it kind of really does matter. In my view, what you need to do is to figure out who your local federal member is, and you need to email them urgently. That's it. It shouldn't take more than 15 minutes. You need to explain clearly and politely that if this bill passes, you will not vote for them at the next election. It's that simple, or ever again. This is the only language that these slimy fuckers in politics understand. Now, if your member is on any of the numerous opposing teams, you just have to tell them again, clearly and politely, that if they don't manage to quash this bill, that's it, dude, it's over. You're never going to vote for them again, starting at next year's federal election. That's all they really care about. It's the only language they understand. Do it now. It's very easy. You just Google federal member for your suburb, okay? That usually works off the bat, or maybe just type in find my federal electorate. There's a process there. The Australian Electoral Commission can tell you what your electorate is, and when you find that out, you can find out who your member is. It's very simple. It doesn't even have to be a long email. Now, if you're in the dark about why this proposed legislation is so preposterously shit, that's next. This report is sponsored by NordVPN. Get 4 extra months of Nord for free now. It's totally risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee at nordvpn.com/AEJC. Online security threats are everywhere, but obviously you don't have to be the next victim. And that's where NordVPN comes in, locking everything down efficiently in the background. Go to nordvpn.com/AEJC now. Every 2-year NordVPN plan receives a huge discount plus 4 bonus months on top for free. nordvpn.com/AEJC. I'll put a link in the description. Using NordVPN is dead easy. Just subscribe, download the app and connect. 1 click later, your IP address is shielded and your traffic is encrypted across as many as 6 of your devices. Nord is, of course, the fastest VPN on the planet, and it costs only about as much as 1 cup of coffee every month to keep your data, your identity, and your devices secure. Masking your location also means you'll be able to access streaming and other services that might be geo-blocked where you live, plus you can continue to watch your favourite content when you travel. Go to nordvpn.com/AEJC now. Boost your security, get a huge discount, and enjoy those 4 extra months completely free on every 2-year plan. It's all totally risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/AEJC. I'll put a link in the description. This is the second crack at what they call the Misinformation and Disinformation Bill, the MAD Bill, appropriately enough. Politicians and their mates in the media are going to be exempt from any of these limitations, okay? So, for example, Sky News can continue to pump out its right-wing horse shit with total impunity if the bill passes, and those equally reprehensible them-they socialists over at the ABC, ditto, on the left, right? All good. But you're going to be gagged, as will every independent journalist on YouTube or X or Facebook, whatever. Any platform someone's using independently, they're going to have the crosshairs painted on them, right? Politicians can say what they want during another lockdown, hypothetically, but with the threat of very hefty fines for platforms like X and Facebook and YouTube, those platforms are just going to shut you down if you disagree with some official narrative. This is simply them protecting you from dangerous, misinformative ideas as the government tells the story. But really, it's them just not liking A, people like you disagreeing with them, and B, broadcasting it so effectively on social media. They kind of struggle with that, so they've decided to gag it because they haven't been able to put in place any other countermeasure for this tsunami of criticism when they do such a shit job running the country. Ultimately, it's going to be up to some faceless bureaucrat shithead in Canberra to decide what's disinformation and what's misinformation. But in reality, the government wants the social media platforms to be so shit scared of massive fines that they just censor anything that amounts to being even halfway close to the line, meaning anything that the government of the day just might not like. The government wants to go back to the bad old days, effectively, when only Rupert, Kerry Stokes and the ABC had a voice. They want you gagged, dude, and they want that bad. So, what does the proposed bill define misinformation as exactly? Content that is reasonably verifiable as false, misleading or deceptive. Well, that doesn't sound too bad, because if someone says, I don't know, the Pacific Ocean just disappeared last night, then that's reasonably verifiable as false, isn't it? You just go to the beach and have a look. So that seems straightforward outwardly. But how about if someone says the next lockdown is unjust or immoral or an overreaction or an example of governmental overreach? Who decides if that's misinformation? Because for hundreds of years in the West, it hasn't been some bureaucrat in an office with no window. What we've done instead is we've had very public debates about things that matter. That's positive, right? Slavery in the US is perhaps the perfect example. Back then, some people were quite pro-slavery, like at the time. Mostly slave owners, coincidentally. Some were dead set against it, mostly slaves, knock me down with a feather. Safe to say there was a pretty profound difference of opinion on this one. So they had a lengthy debate. And sometimes tempers got frayed. There was a big difference on both sides. Some were informed voices and some were crackpots, but hey, that's society, isn't it? Strident voices at time. The majority verdict that ultimately emerged, slavery, bad. These fuckers today want to prevent any debate by only allowing their side of the story to be interpreted by the basically fucked up mainstream media that's up against the ropes commercially anyway, because alternative media is killing it. Who decides what is misleading? Because to some people, Sky News' right-wing horseshit is basically a gospel truth, and to others it's well inside the nutbag city limits. If this bill gets up, they're still going to be able to inflict their horseshit on you, and I'm actually all for that. You just won't be able to comment on it, right? There's a bit more to the definition too, and it's quite interesting. Content that is likely to cause or contribute to serious harm. When you think about it, this is all just ever so slightly like thought crime from George Orwell's fantastic novel 1984, which was written back in the 40s. The offending content here doesn't have to cause or contribute to serious harm at all. It just has to be likely to do those things. You don't get arrested for being likely to rob a bank, I note. You have to actually go in with a gun and a bag and a note. So that's a difference. To what degree does this content have to be likely to contribute to serious harm, I wonder? And while we're on this subject, what exactly is serious harm? Okay? What's the definition? Like, lay it out. This is a legislative process, so define it for me. Where's the boundary between sort of unremarkable harm, or what you might think of as median harm, and serious harm? To some people, serious harm involves merely the use of the wrong pronouns at the wrong time, or the absence of something like a welcome to country statement, or being prevented from using an app. To others, most of us I'd suggest, that kind of thing is a bit trivial, kind of like a flesh wound, metaphorically. When you think about it, harm is a very subjective concept. Here's one, how about if you provide online a list of reasons outlining why you think the British colonisation of Australia was actually awesome and you're all for it? Could that contribute to serious harm? I guess that depends on who you ask. I'd suggest that even a very mild criticism of something like a new vaccine, hypothetically, discussing the R&D processes and the number of negative cases per million doses, whatever, could arguably contribute to vaccine hesitancy, and some faceless shithead in Canberra could be pressured by the government of the day to stamp that kind of thing out by claiming that it could contribute to serious harm if such an idea gets traction, however well researched it is at the outset. So this is dangerous territory for governments to enter into with badly framed legislation. And just for the record, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I got freaking vaccinated 3 times. It was the right thing to do in the circumstances. #science. But if you want to criticise vaccination or claim that, I don't know, Hitler wasn't really all that bad, just knock yourself out, dude. Go for it. We do not need laws preventing this. We just don't. We never have needed them. They're a net negative for society. I'd argue that a 12-year-old freaking child could do better drafting this proposed legislation, if it were even needed, which clearly it's not, and which nobody outside of Parliament House thinks it is. Instead of fixing the electricity grid or dealing with the rising cost of living or wealth inequality, the shit roads, congestion in our cities, air quality, the fact that we basically no longer have a freaking manufacturing industry, like, fuck's sake, dude. We have all the iron ore and all of the coal, and we don't even bother to make steel. We could be here all day detailing the things that need doing urgently, and I won't be able to say that in a few weeks. Albo and the various chumps in the three-ringed circus deep inside the monument to the death of integrity in public life are fixated on shit that doesn't matter to ordinary Australians like you and me. Referenda and e-safety, like, give me a break. Adult Australians do not want and did not ask for the federal government to be like a big mommy and daddy in Canberra telling us what we can watch and what we can hear and protecting us and keeping us safe. Like, fuck that, dude. This is a niche that they have carved out for themselves without consultation while we were paying them to do important things. Americans would never stand for manure of this fine export calibre. The First Amendment over there actually states, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. That's pretty clear, and it works so well in practice. Seems like a thoroughly more carefully thought out set of regulatory boundaries than this proposed North Korean shit from the clown and his posse. Personal opinion. And for the record, I am not a free speech absolutist either. Like, bugger that. There has to be limits. Vilification and incitement to violence are absolutely unacceptable. But we already have decent laws covering that. The other problem is legislative creep. And no, dude, I'm not talking about, P-Dut. I could be easily, but I'm not. At least not in this instance. I'm talking about legislation being introduced for one thing and then rapidly metastasizing out of control, just getting bigger and bigger and bigger with no treatment options, right? Look at that six-figured zealot Julie Inman Grant, arguably Australia's most ridiculous bureaucrat, the E-Karen, the E-Safety Commissioner. She got a corner office in the Clown Castle initially to protect children from online harm. Like, okay, everyone wants to protect children from harm. But now she's become the poster girl for regulatory overreach and quite unnecessary censorship, in my opinion, as she seemingly prosecutes this vendetta against her former employer, X. This is a really simple concept, okay? The government has only one job, and that job is to make Australia less shit. And they're not doing that. They're not even treating you like an adult anymore, allowing you to decide what you want to read or watch or listen to, making decisions for yourself, in other words, like a proper grown-up. They want to protect you from all of that responsibility. Because they can't make Australia less shit, they're trying to gag you from commenting on the crap job that they're doing, making the joint more shit. It really is that simple. These fuckers need to realise that the freedom of speech is the most fundamental freedom that you or me will ever have. Look at the places in the world with the greatest limits on speech, right? Like, hands up everyone who wants to go and move there. Eroding free speech for the benefit of an elite few in the government is both immoral and unethical. It's completely arse backwards as steps go in a country such as ours. The speech that is completely benign, which offends nobody, well, that's never going to need protecting, is it? The speech that needs protecting is the speech that someone else finds offensive or just doesn't like. We need to protect potentially offensive speech. This is a properly grown-up concept. we have to be able to say things that people might not like so that we can thrash out issues that really matter and make Australia less shit. Being offended, potentially, is the price you pay for that freedom to have that debate in public. It really doesn't matter if the person who's upset about what's being said is sitting in seat 1A of the prime ministerial jet, the clown comet, or if he's just Trev next door who has a PhD in astrophysics and who really hates it when you tell him that the Earth is flat and, by the way, it's only 6,000 years old. You're allowed to say that, dude. It actually tells PhD Trev some very valuable information about you. Email your local MP shithead today, dude. Your most fundamental freedom in this imminently third world banana republic hinges on them getting the message that this legislation is unacceptable. Make it loud and clear, but please be polite.